Hi, my name is Bill Rupp, and I was in the United States Marine Corps 1942 through 1945.
So you served during World War II?
During World War II, yes.
Do you have a couple highlights or moments you'd like to share with us?
Well, yeah, there's several rather funny incidents. Pearl Harbor was on December 7th, 1941. I was an 18-year-old kid riding a bicycle. I got home that Sunday morning, and my dad was listening to the thing, and he said, "You need to come in here, son, listen to this." We listened to the radio. I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was, So we got a map out, I looked at it, and he said, the draft is on, and he said, "Bill, being my son, you're probably going to end up in the service in the very near future." So I thought about that, and I thought, well, did I want to go to the Army, Navy, Air Force? What? I said, I knew somebody had been in the Marine Corps in the training that they got. I said, no, the Marine Corps is for me. So I went down and enlisted in the Marine Corps shortly after Pearl Harbor, and then that was like 3 weeks later. We were in 1942. And then I was sent to boot camp in 42 and went through a training at San Diego, California. It was funny because when we got there, we got to California, got into boot camp. I'll never forget, all the other trainees that would precede us were there. "You guys will be sorry. You guys will be sorry." But I can honestly say I never was sorry that I was a United States Marine. I'm very, very proud of the fact I was a Marine. Even to the day, I still am a Marine. Because there's an old adage, once a Marine, always a Marine. It's the way it goes. But we went through training in California, and it was rather fast training. I started with the old Springfield 03 rifle, and then shortly into the middle of training, we got the new Garand M1, which was a 8-round clip magazine for the rifle, which was tremendous firepower. And I shot for record with that, and shot for record with the 45, and did very well through our training. And I remember after our training was over with, we went to a little advanced training, and then we went down to the ballpark. There's an old ballpark in San Diego, and we got lined up down there, and we're standing in line, and what the heck is going on? Well, we found out in a matter of minutes as we got down there. They issued us steel helmets, combat knife, and then I saw all this mosquito down there. I know we're not going to Alaska. I pretty well knew that we were heading off to somewhere in the Pacific, which we did. But a rather funny, and it wasn't so funny at that time, incident aboard ship. When we boarded ship with our rifles and our packs and everything, we got into the bunks that were assigned to us on this troop ship. It was a Navy type of bunk where canvas thing, and laying in that bunk with your rifle and all that was not the greatest thing in the world. But we took off and met a small convoy, and we were heading over to the Pacific. You have to remember, during that period of time, right after Pearl Harbor, that there were Japanese submarines that were on the perimeter of California. They did actually threw some shells into the forest in Oregon, caught fire. Well, we were out a couple of days in the mid-Pacific, and at that time, every ship you were aboard zigzag, and a little whistle blow, and you zigzag, never on a straight route. And that was to keep submarines from, keeping up with you and spotting them. But we were out mid-Pacific, and all of a sudden the claxes went up, and the Navy gunners came, and the guns went up, and we all came top deck with our rifles. And I can never forget that this young Marine at my age next to me, "Let's go down and get our 30-06s." Like that, he said, "We're going to hit those submarines." I broke out laughing. He said, "30-06 round is not going to make a dent in that submarine, believe me." Like that. He said, "Oh, you're right." And it was just one of those comical things. And then as the guns went off and the depth charges from the Navy DEs took care of the submarines, the submarine was over, and off we went on. And we arrived at Pearl Harbor. It came down through Ford Island, and we saw the results of Pearl. It took several years to get that all cleaned up in that mess there. But I remember as we passed, the Oklahoma was still keeled up, and this Marine captain said to me, he said, "Guys, remember this." Well, we went up to Mount Lua Ridge and spent the night up there a couple of days for additional training. Then we boarded another ship going out to forward Pacific, and we went to some of the islands out the mid-Pacific. In this one island, I was on this gun position. I ended up as a fuse setter on a 90 millimeter. Like that, we were setting the fuses, and yeah, I will never forget one of these instances that I guess was comical and sometimes not comical. We're putting these things in there. Guy behind me jumps up like that. The gunner next to him almost shot the guy. He was one of our own men, you know. So you had to be careful on those islands. But primarily, what I did in that segment, the CBs had put in landing strips, and we had small bombers that were going down and hitting some of the mid-Pacific islands that Japanese held. And when they came back, we had the radar, the IFF on there, and the IFF would trigger the plane. The planes would come in and land. If they didn't trigger, a Japanese plane came behind it, we were, boom, knock them down. Like that. And we spent time up in that forward gun position and through a lot of problems. And I guess probably about 3 months later, around the side of my gun position, comes this guy. I look at him, he looks at me, and now we're 5,000 miles away from home in St. Louis. Here's a guy that I knew in school. So he came by the gun position. He goes, "Bill, my God, how are you?" So we chatted, and he went about his duties. And about 3 months later, he passed by my gun position. He was going on patrol. He was dead within 10 minutes. And I was the last person that he saw from St. Louis. When I got back after the war, it had been written up in the newspaper. And when I got back, his family had my wife and I. At that time, I was married then, to dinner and talk about it. And very unpleasant, and I really don't want to.
What was his name, Bill?
I'm trying to think of his last name right now, and I can. His first name was Ray. And it slips when you're 85. Your mind doesn't like that. It'll come back to me though. But one of the things that another instance I recall, I was on an ammunition barge. We were in between islands, and we had 30-06 rounds in these boxes, and we had 90 millimeter. And I'm sitting with an M1 on top of this 90 millimeter round, and we're hitting between two islands. I thought, man, if a plane hits us, they're going to find 1 million pieces of me spread out over this ocean like that. Yeah, sitting there. So we get there. We pull up on the land side. Again, I jump off. There's another guy I know from St. Louis like that. And I can see his picture, but I just can't recall his name. But I'd gone to school with him like that. So 2 instances. Here we were. Yep. So I opened up the ammunition box, and in the ammunition box is a little note. And they're from a lady. And she says, "I hope this reaches all of you in time." And I look on the side of the box, and it says, "St. Louis Ordnance Plant, Goodfella Boulevard, St. Louis, Missouri." That's where that box came from, loaded with ammunition. I thought, holy cow.
Yeah.
You know, here I am 5,000 miles away from there, and it was like, and I lived only 5 miles from there.
Right.
And I thought, my God, you know, like that. So it brought back a lot of memories. And I've got good memories and memories that are not so good like that. I spent 2 years, 6 months, 17 days, and I don't know how many hours in the Central and South Pacific. It was a trying time in my life. I did have, through a lot of the shelling and everything, I get compensation from the government for my hearing. I would do it again if I had to. I'm very proud that I served my country. I'm very proud I was in the combat area for the period of time out there. I lost a lot of good friends out there, the guys that I'll remember, not just from the St. Louis area, but from all across the country. But I'm very, very proud that I served my country, and if asked to do so, I would, without question, I would do it again.
You bring up a great point. A lot of guys didn't make it back. Did you ever sometimes wonder why you were one of the lucky ones?
Why in the middle of all these battles, in the middle of all these guys out, whether you're in the Pacific campaign or you're in Europe or you're over in the China-Burma, it doesn't make any difference. We're all a group. But why was this guy picked? Why was this guy not picked? You know, and you wonder. You come back and you sit and you think about it. And I think about the guys that I knew, and you say, for the grace of God, there go I. And I think that's what I think. Someplace along the line, the great supreme being up there said, "This is the way it is. You've got a life to lead. You're going to go and do bigger and better things in your life, you know, although this is about the biggest thing you could ever do." I have a feeling about that, a deep feeling, that I was meant to stay here to help my fellow veterans. I'm very veteran-oriented. I love my fellow veterans, whether they be in the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. They're all brothers. But I found when I came back after the war, I was only comfortable with veterans. I had a very, very hard time sitting down with a group of civilians that had not served and listened to their banter when I had so many other things in my mind of things that really were of the utmost importance. And I'm glad that we did that, because these folks that are sitting here talking about things, we allowed them to do that by our actions in the war. But it was hard. I couldn't talk to them about my feeling of my fellow veterans because they weren't there and they don't know. And I think a lot of us found that out. And it comes back, they call it PTSD today, they call it shell shock back then, whatever. We all come back with some problems when you're gone in the combat areas that length of time. And we relate to each other. And even to this day, I belong to a lot of veterans organizations, and I'm only really that comfortable when I'm with with vets of, whether it be, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's Korea or Vietnam or World War II or whatever it is, but they have been in the same shoes I've been in, so we relate. And good or bad, that's life, you know. But I decided many years ago that I wanted to devote what I could to helping my fellow veterans, and that's what I've done.
Do you have kids come up on the street? Do people come up and thank you for your service today?
I was in Lowe's Hardware not long ago, walking down there, and I had my jacket on, and I always wear my hat. Two guys walked by me. One guy stopped, came back, and he said, "May I shake your hand?" I said, "Thank you for your service." And it means a lot, because they're thanking me, or thanking all of the other guys who served, and guys that will never be able to shake some hand. And it just, I like the fact that they take the time to do that, and to realize that for the grace of God, you know, there go I, and that we are a free country today because of these millions and millions of people that served over the years. We had 16 million people under arms in World War II. Though our World War II guys, we're dying now at the rate of 1,400 a day. We're down to less than 2 million. So that's a big drop. And I just, from a veteran standpoint, I love my fellow veterans. I love everything they stand for, because they stand for what's right and what's good.
That's a pretty significant label, to be labeled the greatest generation.
Yeah, it is.
How's that make you feel?
Well, first of all, let me put it this way. We come back from World War II, and I will never forget in November, which was then Armistice Day, they had this big parade in downtown St. Louis. And I'd only been back 3 weeks. Like that, and I still had my uniform on. You got to march in a parade. We were treated like the greatest heroes in the world. Here's the greatest generation. Look at these heroes coming out. And we're not all heroes. We just went out and did a job. That's what we did. For our country, for the flag, when I saw the flag go up when we did things, I mean, to this day I cry. It was so important to all of us that we preserve the rights and the freedoms of this country. So we did it. We're not heroes. We're just guys that did a job. But then I came back and I saw what happened after the Korean War. And people had forgotten war. People didn't want to talk to them. The Vietnam guys came back and they were spit on like that. And man, that killed me. And I thought, I'm not going to let this happen. So I really became involved in Veterans Affairs, and I put a lot of stuff together. And I look at it this way. We were the greatest generation in the 40s. The guys in the 50s, at the Korean battle guys, they are the greatest generation. I look at the Vietnam guys. This is another great, each of them are the greatest generation for their time. That's the way I look at it. It's not just, the greatest generation encompasses this group, encompasses everybody. Everybody that's ever served. Each of them are of the greatest generation. That's the way I look at it.